Good to go.
I'm going to call to order this July 30th, 2021 salary board. Would all please rise for the pledge of allegiance, followed by a brief moment of silence. Mike, can you do this in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettys.
Here.
Here. Commissioner Vogler.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here. We have a quorum. Okay.
We'll find out.
Yeah. That will make something up.
I have him here.
Public comments? I am shocked and astounded. Minutes from July 6th, 2021. I'll give my colleagues a minute to check those over and take a motion to approve or make any necessary changes. Oh, I see it.
Yes, in the back. I like the back of the bus.
So moved.
Second. We'll give the second to Dave. Dan, you'll get the second. That's fine. I'd rather have the third, but I'll take it. All right, we have a motion and a, yeah, just I'll say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We're good. New resolutions, first on deck, we have the court today represented by Mike Offenbach. Mike, if you'd be able to approach the mic and show us what we have going on here today.
Mike.
Yes.
Morning.
Lauren.
Yes, as we know, there was a vacancy created in courtroom one recently that was unexpected and sad. And Judge Motto needed to replace his position with a confidential secretary. And of course, he's the president judge, and he needs his position, and he needs to get somebody that's qualified for this position. So what was discussed was within range of what the other judicial confidential secretaries are making, and he just wanted to present this so that he could move forward and fill his vacancy.
I'm good with it pending one thing. Could we be able to include language in it, just because I know that Secretary for Courtroom 3, that original, that was that a month ago or a month and a half ago, we approved language allocating an additional $3,000 a year to Courtroom 1 Secretary for duties performed in addition to, I know 3 is going to be taking this from now on, and we just paid her a $1,500 stipend. Would we be able to put language in this resolution that rescinds that $3,000, that extra $3,000 to, okay. All right, Dave, how would we like to word that?
I can't remember.
I'm looking at the expert here.
I can't remember how we worded it. If
We would say the salary
it
is set at,
ended.
check your minutes
Let's see.
on the first page under resolution 33. Although that may not answer your question.
Well, okay.
Yeah, that's
Language.
that 13, that 1,500 we gave the 3, and we gotta rescind the 3,000 to 1.
Does that resolution, the first one, say that when she stops doing the work, that you don't get the money
That's,
anymore?
I thought that's what.
Does
Yeah, it
I
does.
think.
Okay.
Yes,
So I don't
I
think
think
we
that
need to
first
rescind it.
resolution did, so I don't
She
think
gotta
there's a
do the
need to
work.
rescind.
I almost don't want to leave it on the books though.
I won't pay her. I guarantee you that. If you wanted to.
Yeah, I just rather, I just keep it, I don't, maybe, yeah, keep it clean.
So we put 36 and except 36A.
I'll tell you what we can do, we can just rescind
Rescind that
that
resolution.
original resolution, whatever that
Mhm.
number is.
Okay, all right.
And so do we want to put language in there? So now that it will be resolved by Lawrence County Salary Board that 1, salary for confidential judicial secretary for 1 be set at $36,800, and 2, salary board resolution, and then we'll leave it blank for,
It's
I think
rescinded.
Vanessa's looking
Want me to go
for
grab
right
it?
now in her folder.
yeah.
That'd be 2, salary board resolution for additional compensation is
Additional
rescinded.
Yes.
While we're waiting, Mr. Chairman,
For the record, normally I believe the judge would be here, but my understanding is that he is at a court-related conference on judicial business today,
Yes,
out of town.
right,
Otherwise, he would have been here
right,
today.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, he never misses any of the meetings, but he's at a statewide judicial conference. And all of our judges went, so.
I'd like the minutes to reflect that, so if we ever look back and say, well,
Right.
where was Judge Motto? We want to make known that he is on business today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sure.
When I call roll, do you want Michael to vote?
No,
Okay.
he can.
I believe that resolution number was 026.
So salary board resolution 026 for additional compensation will be rescinded. Then you'll retype these and then I'll
Yes,
sign.
sure.
Because one of the things I'm looking at doing either in October, which will be our next salary board, or in January for our annual, is we have a whole bunch of positions that are sort of irrelevant, that are still on the books. I'd like to get those all sort of cleaned up, patched up, and
Spring cleaning in October.
spring cleaning in October.
There,
Gotcha.
there you go.
We're government, we don't have to make sense.
All right, so the resolution now reads, this is your resolution, it says that, one, the salary for confidential judicial secretary for courtroom one be set at 36.8. Two, salary board resolution that would be
027,
20027. That's 21027.
yes.
21-027 for additional compensation will be rescinded.
Yes.
And that is, are you?
Oh, no, it is 6.
Yeah,
It is 6.
27 was number 3.
27 was
Number 30.
for courtroom 4.
4, okay.
I've got to cross this out 3 times, are you sure?
I'm pausing.
All right.
Okay.
Glad I read that.
So that's her motion.
Okay.
And who seconded? Did I second? I seconded, so I re-second.
So we got a motion from Loretta, a second from Dave, salary board resolution
Yes.
036.
2021-036,
36.
which is gonna read salary for confidential judicial secretary for courtroom 1 be set at $36,800. And 2, salary board resolution 2021-027, or 026, 26,
It's starting to get confusing.
026
All right,
is rescinded.
I got it, okay.
I crossed it out a bunch of times too and couldn't read the cross outs. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings?
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes,
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mike, from the
Thank
mic.
Thank you.
And this is for the commissioners.
thank you, Michael.
Stuff that we gotta do with relation to that. Up next for the jail, we have, we'll make this 037. Resolution for discussion possible approval to rename the CO intelligence officer position to intel officer / DA, drug task force liaison, with a salary increase of $8,000 to be paid out of drug task force funds. And Loretta, since you're the chairperson for the prison board, I'm gonna turn it over to you for the explanation here.
Not much to explain. The fact that the intel officer does such a great job with assisting the drug task force in gathering information through the phone recordings and such, that the DA and members of the drug task force feel that if they could utilize her additionally, that it would be worthwhile that she be compensated, and this is what the DA's feels is an adequate increase for her to continue to do that work, that she has been gathering the intelligence without compensation, doing it as part of her daily duties, and therefore, if there was a way to give her additional compensation to do additional work, that would actually benefit not only the DA's office, but the jail, as well as the citizens of the county, because she's gathering information that affects arrests and prosecutions.
All right, any questions, comments from the board?
Comment? I've talked with Josh and some
Okay,
other people,
sure.
and they've said she's been instrumental in solving a number of cases. So this is
Yes.
this is a wonderful thing for the
Mhm.
jail and for the county, because obviously, she seems to be a natural with this, which is unusual, but it's good.
And that, yes, and to put it that way, she's, without revealing a whole lot of different things, I guess I'm stumbling because I don't want to say too much, but she's able to piece together at, different conversations at different points in time that actually have assisted different types of prosecutions.
Josh is
Yeah,
easy with his, hard with his comments, so him to come out with as strong as he did
yes,
means that we need to, consider this.
yes.
I'm certainly in favor of this proposal. I think it's important all around. I do have more or less a technical question. Perhaps one of you can answer this. Is the commitment on the part of the district attorney to cover this increase with his drug task force funds, is that a one-time thing or is it in perpetuity? Do we know?
In perpetuity, increase would be eliminated if the duties and or funding cease.
Thank you very much.
Did you make the motion?
No, we were just discussing it
Yeah, well,
to clarify a little bit, and so
I asked them
I
to
will,
take
yeah,
down
to
just
clarify,
so she
just so that if there was more information that I could give for it.
I'm not in a rush, I'm just asking.
yeah, I'll take.
But I will make the motion.
Second, we have a motion and second, this time Dan. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, question on the motion, Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings?
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
Yes,
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes,
Motion carries.
I almost screwed up the first one whenever we were calling the roll. I'm so used to just hearing you, I don't even pay attention anymore. I just hear you talk 3 times. And at the third thing, I'm just anticipating saying, yes, I almost screwed that up today. Up next, we have what looks to be 4 resolutions for Children and Youth Services. We have Director Bout with us today. Director Bout, it's always good to see you.
Likewise, Commissioner.
Welcome to the hot seat.
yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
I'll turn it over to you.
Since we have so many, where would the board, which resolution would you like me to start with?
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll make the foster change in job title from foster program care specialist to foster kinship program supervisor. We'll make that 038, and if you want to talk about that first.
Which one's that, I'm sorry?
This is the order.
Change
They're
foster
listed
care
on the
program.
agenda.
$100,000. Yeah. 038.
I apologize. Thank you. I just handed Mr. Bout the agenda, and in doing so, I missed what you said. Is the resolution involving the foster program care specialist, which is 3A?
Yes.
And is that the first one we're considering? Okay, thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
what I'd like to do here is I'd like to we'll have Director Bout go through all of them. And then we'll initiate discussion after you give an explanation for all of them.
So pertaining to foster care and kinship, this is our agency program. And just in Linnea, we have an internal program, and then we also contract with 9 vendors for foster care. Currently, we do not contract with any outside vendors for kinship. So what has brought us to the table for these positions related to foster care and kinship? Currently, we have 1 person overseeing certification, recertification, and monitoring of our internal program. The individual, which again, I'm going to withhold names unless we were in executive session. So the individual currently has 70 cases. The State Office of Children, Youth, and Families, OCYF, has recommended to us that we add 2 additional staff to the county agency foster care kinship program. Ultimately, OCYF, or I should say ideally, would like to see us have our staff with no more than 25 to 30 cases, which would put that position or positions more in alignment with the state regulation, maximum regulation related to caseworkers. Let me add with the maximum of 30 cases per caseworker as the only comparable that we're looking at. No one realistically in the field finds that 30 cases is feasible in today's age for caseworkers. So what I have before you is just a financial analysis of the impact. So currently, 71 total cases, that amounts to 110 youth. So when I talk cases, the state is looking at how many total cases he has, but the financial impact is approximately 110 youth. The daily average, the total per diem, currently is $28.50 for our internal program. That's the cash flow. That's the big number that adds up that you see on the front end in terms of our budget. But then once that reimbursement is in, those costs are driven down to $227. Now, looking at just some other quick facts, I provide for you on this first page, when we use our outside providers for foster care, the average daily per diem right now is $73.20. Understand something, that number will continue to go up because of Family First implementation. Federal legislation has our foster care and kinship providers understanding that they're worth more tomorrow than today. And so when they tried to renew their contracts with us, I mean, I was faced at times with 10 to 13% increases on their contract, which we didn't accept because that's not what our building escalator is. So we've tried to work within the scope of our budget. Ultimately, when we use an outside provider, that $73.20 is driven down to $691 after total reimbursement. So what I have for you is differential. Differential related to cash flow or cash on hand. The differential between our number and their number out the door is $44.70. The bottom line, once there's reimbursements, the differential between our number and their number is $464. So when you go to the second page of the document, I gave you a couple examples for you to be able to assess when you make your decision. So if we were to reduce right now, the cost differential example 1, if we were to take the individual's caseload from 70 to 25, a 45 case reduction, there's approximately 68 youth that would impact at a differential of $44.70 over the course of 12 months. That difference is, the cash flow number is $1.1 million, a little bit over. The bottom line is that differential, that cash flow differential turns into reimbursement and those monies come in. The added county cost is $115,164. And the second example I give you, I follow the same methodology. Number of cases, number of kids that it approximately impacts, the current today differential between the max bill rate and our rate, and then the bottom line expense once all reimbursements are in from federal and state sources. So if we reduce the employee from 70 to 25 versus if we reduce them from 70 to 30. And then on the third page, what I gave you, again, as part of your analysis for decision-making, is the cost escalator. So what I did was I applied 12 months. So you got to see over each month, if I were to say right now, and there is risk and safety concerns with this third page, but let me present it to you. If I hold him at 70, which right now I have stopped taking referrals, I've placed a hold on that program and we are outsourcing foster care referrals to one of our 9 providers. But if I were to place a hold on him at 70, approximately 8 new cases come in and approximately 3 cases get discharged or closed related to foster care. So ultimately, month over month, there's going to be a net gain of about 5 new cases. If you run that out at the end of 12 months, 60 cases, which again, may be a little conservative actually, when you look at the total number of kids that we currently have in the program over 12 months. But if it held to 60, you get to see from a cash flow perspective, month over month, what that looks like in terms of the additional cash on hand that you would need, and then the expense number that you would need. And so at the end of the day, you have the totals at the bottom. The total estimate of how much cash on hand, additional cash on hand, and at the bottom, how much additional expense that outsourcing it would cost. And then what I did for you, based off of the salary board resolutions pertaining to foster care and kinship, was at the bottom, I gave you the salary examples of if we were to add 2 at the proposed salary, at the $1,000 difference to the individual that's currently in the position, assume that they're going to all have family benefits, their wage. I teased out ultimately what you were looking at in terms of additional cash flow or cash on hand needed for their wage and benefits, and also their additional, again, once there's reimbursement, because these positions are reimbursed at approximately 80%. And so sometimes we do a little better than that, but at 80%, that gives you your county share number.
Thank you. Up next will be 39, which is the creation of 2 full-time foster program care specialists at a salary of $32,000 plus benefits each. Non-union effective immediately will make that 39.
So 39, I'm gonna say ditto, because the presentation that I just provided you related to this handout suffices for 38 and 39.
All right, then we'll go to,
Or we wait until the end, ask
yeah,
questions.
okay. We'll go to 40.
You're assuming I can remember it that long.
Hey, we're making a lot of assumptions for me too here.
Go ahead.
For 6 new positions in this resolution, 3 of which are full-time CYS case aides at a base salary of $28,722.34. 3 of them are full-time caseworker 1s at the base salary of $33,557.98. What do we have going on?
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm gonna refer back to some data that the board has received previously. And then this document that I have for you is new. So in terms of the total number of youth, total number of referrals, ultimately last year, this last fiscal year, we had nearly 1,500 referrals. We served just under 2,000 total children. We had 350 kids in care. And the new document that I'm introducing to you is a 15 county sample. This sample is an average of their intake departments and their ongoing departments. And then what I did was I started with on the document giving you a weighted average in terms of where we compare in regards to others. So you see that there are different class sizes. And so for the first caseload example that I give you as part of this analysis, weighted average, top 4. So of this sample, we are 3rd with a weighted average of workers having between intake and ongoing 15 cases. Let me say that this weighted average are June numbers, and that's going to be low for us because school is out. The highest number of referrals that the agency has had since I had been your administrator is 180 in a month. So that's saying to our intake staff, you're going to get 20 new cases each if we're fully staffed at 10, right? Somewhere between 17 and 20 new cases. On top of the cases that you have 30 or 60 days to investigate and to decide what we're going to do. I wanted to add for you, when I talk about this flow, to give you some numbers and put this in perspective also. So this comes from the state. This is Hornsby. This is a state vendor. And so the population flow of entries. So I'm going to give you January through March 2021. Lawrence County per 1,000 children. Our rate is 3.6. So 3.6 out of every per 1,000 come into our intake system. Now, this document looks at the other 5th class counties, Western, and statewide. When I say Western, 23 counties in the Western region. So we're at 3.6. The other 5th class counties are at 1.4. The Western region is at 1.4, and the state is at 1.1. So what that means is we are intaking, we are receiving calls. And it's very important that the general public, and I know this board already knows this, we are a mandated service. In the same way that when our public safety office, our county 911 receives a call, an emergency call, they have to respond. We have the same obligations by law. We are mandated to respond. And so the environment is telling us through this data that we are receiving a higher rate of calls per 1,000 than, again, the other fifth-class counties, the Western region, and the state. The next piece of data that I wanted to share with you then is the total number of children served per rate of 1,000. Again, this is state data through their vendor. Lawrence County, Class 5, Western, and statewide, so the same layout, same time frame. So our rate per 1,000 is 11.6. Class 5 is 4.5, Western is 6.3, and statewide is 5.7. So we're receiving a higher rate of intake. What comes with it is a higher population flow of total kids. And then the last number that is a part of this series of data per 1,000 again is the total number of kids in care. So the type of case, when we receive the referral, we have an obligation to protect these kids, the same time frame, the same bucket categories. We are at 10.4, Class 5 is at 3.5, Western is at 4.8, statewide is at 4.4. So based off of what I just shared with you, and
We don't have that, right?
you don't have that, let me pass that. Based off of that data that I presented to you in this handout, our intake department, when I looked at 15 counties, it has the 6th highest average of current caseload currently. Ongoing has the 4th highest caseload. And overall weighted together, we're the 3rd highest of this sampling. But again, understand this is June data. The numbers are only going to go up. I mean, do I have caseworkers right now in intake with more than 14 cases? I do. I have somebody right now with 24 cases. In ongoing, do I have staff with a higher caseload than 16? I do. I have people with 20. So I present this data to you so that you can understand the flow. Understand also that the exit surveys tell us that when people leave, they are leaving for a few reasons. Go ahead.
Forgive me. You're talking about people leaving, employees leaving. Is that what you're saying?
Employees leaving.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
When our employees leave, something that plays out in most exit interviews is just the overwhelming nature of the job. The stressfulness of the job comes out, what they're confronted with on a day in and day out basis. Like yesterday, learning that one of our staff was having their life threatened. These types of things weigh on them, and on top of that, they have always a very high volume of casework. And ultimately, how does that affect the end product? I'm not going to sit here and look at you and say to you that if you were to grant positions, that I'm going to guarantee you that there's going to be a correlation in a reduction in the total number of kids in care. I'm not going to say that to you. Because ultimately, once we get to a staffing model that meets the flow of what we're receiving on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, then we hope to be in a better position to assess. Ultimately, where my vision is for how we handle casework is I would like to have a complement of case aides that take the responsibility of collecting medical records, school records, returning the non-safety related calls, and ultimately have a caseworker staff that is focused on complex issues, safety, complex needs, risk. I want the caseworkers to be in the homes and having contact with more frequently high-risk cases. Those high-risk cases are in placement. Those moderate-risk cases are in placement. How can we leverage, how can we get a better result from a family so that if a child is in placement, we can reunify safely, but more quickly? Currently, by the nature of what the staff experience day in and day out, and this is absolutely no knock against my staff. This is the environment that produces this. They are running around doing hot coffee drills. When you cannot plan and predict any semblance of future, and you are stuck in the moment over and over and over again, it leads to what we have. But again, I believe that the board has previously, whether the board of commissioners or the salary board, heard that by adding positions, there's going to be an immediate correlation to a reduction in the total number of youths we have in care, and then that's going to, on the back end, drive down your cost. Let me be clear, I'm not telling you that because I don't have that guarantee for you. But what I would say is, if you were to kind of live a day in the life of whether it's my casework staff, case aides, clerical, fiscal, supervisors, deputies, they are hustling to the point of exhaustion. We have them out of whack with work-life balance. I mean, work-life balance, if there was some semblance of that for these folks, right? We would be better off from a retention perspective, I'm sure of it, but we don't have it. And so pertaining to, I guess 40, that's my presentation.
All right, and last one, 41, which is the third program specialist, which was previously voted down.
40 is the 3 full-time, is that right?
That's 6 full-time.
Or 6. That's what was that, 40?
Yeah, that's good.
You're welcome.
3 case aides and 3 case workers.
Thank you.
Just put 40 less. You probably have it.
This can't be right.
So the board has seen this document in part. I revised it related to the program specialist. I looked at, just so the board could take into account truly the numbers that we're looking at presently. So I kept the analysis with the wage, family benefits, the total, and the county share over 12 months at the higher rate. But I looked to see which employees would be competing for the program specialist position. And those employees would have employee-only benefits. So the wage is the same, there's a reduction in the benefits, it gives a lower total wage plus benefits cost, the county share, and then the last column for that little box that I have there gives you the 2021 county share remaining. So how I calculated that number, I took 5 months of the employee-only benefits cost, and we have 11 pays left, and calculated that out. So the county share would be $4,075.63 for the remainder of 21 for this position. But again, your cash flow number, your cash on hand number is higher than that, and if you take it across 12 months, you're going to be that 66, well, you're going to be less than that total number, 66,533, because again, the people that are going to compete for this position have employee-only benefits. And so if you're looking at the total 12 months of 22 as the full, the next full calendar year, you are going to be under 13,306.73 county share. But again, trying to help be a good steward to you, there are always 2 issues with us financially. There is the cash on hand issue and the need and the cash flow piece, because we are not paid, as you know, like other human service entities. And that is nobody's fault that's in this room. That hopefully will be changed one day. But then there's the bottom line expense number that is set up in the system in which 80% of this, or at times more, like right now we're projecting that 83% of these costs will not be counted off. But we can ultimately have years where up to 20% cost is county cost. We've just been fortunate in my tenure, we've been somewhere between 17 and 19%. But there have been years that predate me that were lower than 17%. We were just fortunate with extra federal monies. So that's the handout related to the program specialist position that has already been on it. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Sure. So let's all start. I'm just going to come out and say I'm voting no on all of these. A couple reasons. First of all, let me reiterate, I do appreciate what you do. And I certainly don't want you or any of your staff to take those no votes in any personal way. But just some quick calculations. We're looking at about roughly a $50,000 total burden rate per employee on average for each of these 9 positions that you're looking at. The way I'm getting that is average about $30,000 worth in salary costs. Figure average about $15,000 in healthcare costs, and an additional $5,000 in fringe benefits, right? That adds up to about $50,000. That adds up to $50,000. For 9 new positions, that adds $450,000 in total cost, $90,000 when you factor in that we're paying 20% of that. When we look at next year's budget, and when we look at future budgets, next year, baseline projections using a 3-year average increase, we're looking at a 0.83% increase year over year in new revenues, right? What that amounts to in our budget is about $250,000, and that's being conservative, and new money, new cash flow. The majority of those funds, that extra $250,000, is going to be eaten up by COLAs, cost of living adjustments for all the employees, as well as the insurance increases that we receive year over year. And what we haven't seen what that increase will be yet for our insurance costs. And so what this does is this increases our obligation by $90,000 in a year and in years where we're not looking at a significant increase in revenue. And so to that end, without making cuts in other areas of the operation, we're setting ourselves up with any additional increases, a potential tax increase, and I can't morally do that. On top of that, we're asking the question of effectively how do we handle more kids in the system? That's effectively the question that we're asking here today. I don't think that's the question that we should be asking. I get that you're looking at a short-term issue. I'm looking at a long-term issue, which is that we have more kids in our CYS system than the 3 counties that surround us combined. I think we got to be looking at diversionary programs. I think we have to be looking at the root cause of why we have to onboard so many kids. And I think that over the long term, that'll be more beneficial than adding 9 new positions, which are only going to increase our cost. I've seen no evidence of where adding positions decreases cost over looking at the past 10 years of county government. And so again, to that end, I'll be voting no on all of these. But thank you for taking the time and for your data. We do appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
I'll open it up for any more questions, comments.
I guess I've been here, this is my 14th year, and you are right. We have heard this story about add more employees and it'll fix the problem. We've done that. It hasn't fixed the problem. I don't know the answer. I mean, I am looking to try to determine what that answer is and figure out what to do with that situation. But I realize no one can say to you, well, you have to do this and it must correlate exactly to dollars. I get that part. I do. What is the state telling you? What are they, when they look at this, and I do have, and I don't find myself often in total agreement with Mr. Boyd. This is sometimes, and it's good. It's actually a good exercise. I mean, it's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I'm not saying that's bad.
Well, if we're in agreement 24/7, one of us isn't doing our job.
One of us is not smart enough. That's right. And I'm not going to say who. But the point is, I don't know the answer, and I guess I'm looking at you and asking, what is the state telling you? I mean, we have like 11,000, we're looking at 2021 population flow into the system, 10,000 as compared to the western region of 4,800. That's twice. We're looking at 2.5 times the flow child population from whatever the second item is, and we're looking for the third. I mean, we're looking at huge numbers of differences as to why they are different. What are our thoughts? How do we fix that? In other words, is it just going to continue the way it is? Is there something we should do about that? Is there something the state is suggesting we should do besides hire people? I mean, we have found, and obviously, as a CPA, I take the funding very seriously. I try to make sure that we're not being, improper stewards of the funds that we're trying to spend. And I have to tell you that in my tenure, CYS has been one of the thorns in my side. I don't mean you personally. I mean, as an overall situation, as I look at that, I have a situation that gives me a pause whenever we're talking about 9 employees. That's 2.5% of the population in the courthouse. So I'm torn here because I don't like the direction that my mind is leading me. And I see what you're talking about. And I understand that that's a dilemma that I don't think either one of us has a great answer to. But I do take one of the things that Mr. Boyd said, and that is, are there programs that we should be doing that would help this? Or is it something that we've got to move into or move around? I guess, and the other thing that gives me pause is we say these resolutions are subject to written approval of the state. So I'd like to know the state's on board right now before I decide if we're going to spend, $500,000. Now, I understand a portion of ours is whatever it is. And I'm trying to be compassionate and make sure that I'm not being stupid about the fact of trying to determine what is the right thing to do. Okay, now, and I have to direct this to Mr. Redham. Have you, if you guys sat down with the state and talked about these things, that they brought things to your attention, is it, and simple question is, what is the answer? That's unfair. I apologize. My answer or my question becomes, what direction are we going? Because are we going the right way? And the other thing I mentioned to John the other day is, I'm going to have another audit exception this year because of a contract matter. Okay, I take my auditing very seriously. I take it to the point where I want to fight over it because I don't like that. Now, because we have an audit exception, why haven't we filled that? I'm not going to put you totally on the spot and ask it because that's not fair. But at the same time, those kind of things bother and affect my mental being when I go to vote for these things. Because if the state's is saying to me as the auditor of this county, you don't have proper contract management in place, you don't have a monitor in place to know whether you're doing the right thing. So how do I know that I'm not, excuse my French, peeing this money down the drain? And I'm using it to do something that's really not going to be appropriate as we move forward. So, I mean, I don't think I have enough data
Right.
to make a decision, to be truthful with you.
Let me help you out a little bit. And John, thank you so much for everything that you have done putting
And
these
what you said was great, John. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it.
Your last question first. And John and I had a conversation with the contract monitor. It was put into the salary contract monitor / program specialist position.
Is that a salary board issue?
And I
We did
believe
it wrong.
it was done correct.
We did it wrong
That
because
was
I can't
done
even pay him
wrong.
out of that.
So now we have to go back and I said to John, if that's something, because you brought it to my attention the other day, I said, let's go ahead and it's not budgeted, but we'll fill that position because it's a position that's on the books however we have to do it. So that we will take care of. Unfortunately, we'll still be, as you said, an audit exception for maybe 2020, but at least we're
At least we
correcting
can
the
say
mistake that
we
was
did it.
made,
We said
correct.
we did it, we did.
Okay, the program specialist position that was previously voted down was a recommendation from the state. The foster care and kinship supervisor increase in salary, and then also the foster care positions are recommendations that were made by the state already because they came in and they were looking through the foster care programming. So those are recommendations that the state is making right now, saying, the phone call was, don't take any more cases. So we can't take any more cases. We're utilizing 9 outside agencies to do foster care. What the director has been trying to do over the last couple of years is to decrease those contracts and increase the work being done within the county so that we're not paying the extra monies to outside agencies.
That's what we've been talking about for 10 years.
Which is great. And listen, longer for me, because one of the reasons I ran for commissioner was to try to help straighten out CYS, because I see what is happening with our youth and our families in our county. So the stride, and it's not visible, believe me when I tell you, but the strides that he has made in the short amount of time that he's been here with staffing and stabilizing staffing, now there's the opportunity to move into those arenas that these positions will help to give us the information that we need. Just like you talked about, or Commissioner Boyd talked about diversionary programs, preventative programs. That's number one what a program specialist deals with. That's what a contract monitor deals with. Right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, the director and I have had huge amounts of conversation on this. We have so many different contracts with so many different agencies that it's almost like, let's utilize what we have, let's try this, let's try that, let's do this, let's do that, because we want to address the needs of the family. The caseworkers don't have the time to go through the different amounts of programming that we have to choose that right one, because they're always putting out fires. That's where the case aid positions will come in, because they can address those minor needs and give the caseworker the time to sit with the program specialist to say, this is what I'm dealing with, this is the type of risk that I have, these are the programs that will work. In essence, yes, pay up front, do what you need to do. The state has continually come in and said, these are programs, these are positions that you need, these are things that you need to do, this is the way that this needs to be done. To be in compliance with everything that the state wants is going to, I say, an easy fix, because they're asking us to do what we should be doing for our citizens in our county. So at the beginning, it's going to seem like we're putting out money for these programs, and I understand that and I know that. But in essence, as you look down the path, we will need less programming outside of the scope of CYS, because the caseworkers will have that ability to look at the programs. We may not need, 20 different contracts. We may not need 9 outside foster care agencies that cost us more money as a county. We may not need the actual foster care programming. So for 9 to, and I actually, and I resent the fact that a human being is reduced to a number in a budget. I resent that. I resent that to every core of my being, that we will sit and discuss human lives with a number. And I will say that right now. I was on the phone with him last night at 9:00 while he was preparing these numbers. He's gone above and beyond to give you the information you need to make the choices that you have to make. And if you can't rely on his expertise, because I will say, I would defend the actions of anything that he does, and him defend his caseworkers and his staff, because he is doing what he needs to do. And being in the system as long as I have, from being a police officer to sitting here, I will defend and support any action that he takes right now.
Well, let's back up a second. First of all, I don't want to reduce anybody's term.
Well, that's what we're doing here. Let's be very clear
No, we're not.
with what we're doing
No,
here.
No, we're not.
That's not what we're doing.
Then every one of these resolutions should be approved. Every single one of them.
This is like taking an airplane and flying it over and dropping money out of it and then deciding it should go to the right place, everything should be fine, everything works good.
He has told you where the money needs to go.
Okay.
He's the expert in the field.
Here's my thing, and I'll just wrap it up, is, and no fault of you. This is the same song that the county's heard for the past 10 years. I've talked to the current chief clerk. He's he used to be the MHDS director. And, he's noted that, back in 2005, for example, the staff at MHDS and the staff at CYS were roughly the same at 10, 12 people. I want to say CYS is now staffed to around, and correct me if I'm wrong, around 50 people.
43 of ours and 4 outside vendors through Swan that we don't have any fiscal responsibility for.
Sure, thank you. And we haven't seen those reductions. And so to me, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. I think that we need to put some more thought into how do we get a different result. And again, I appreciate everything that you do.
Commissioner, I just want to respond briefly to the chief clerk and the experience in MHDS. Since 2005, something happened. It was Jerry Sandusky. And what came with Jerry Sandusky in that trial and that circumstance was a change in Child Protective Service law. And a change in Child Protective Service law has increased dramatically the number of referrals that child welfare agencies receive. And so going back to 2005, my job is to be a good steward of everybody sitting at the table in front of me. No matter what your viewpoints, what your opinions, what your preference on any particular item is, whether it's people, fiscal, or a combination of all of the above. But somebody presenting information to you that would want to say that the landscape in 2005 is identical to the landscape in 21 is providing a storyline that is misleading. And I would be glad to sit down with the individual to look at also too the differential between MHDS and CYS. MHDS, extremely valuable, a system that we absolutely must have. We work with many individuals with behavioral health issues, mental illness, crisis. And so without that system, we would be lacking significant resources. But again, the difference between those two systems is we have a legal mandate all the time to respond. And so if we get that phone call from Childline or we get that call through call screening, I don't have the ability to say that I'm not going to take your ticket and serve you. And so I just want to add that detail to you.
Sure, thank you. I just want to reiterate, I think we need to take a long, hard look at the system as a whole, and ask ourselves the question, why are Lawrence County cases so high versus everywhere else in Pennsylvania when you factor in population? Until we have a better answer, a better handle on that question, I cannot endorse nine new positions, increasing total county workforce 2.5%.
I'm going to
Well,
say, I'm sorry.
If I may. No, go ahead, David.
I'm going to tell you where I am on this at this particular moment. I think that kinship and foster care, those items right there, I can support. I cannot support the other 6 at the moment. I'm not asking you to vote them down. I'm asking you to table them and get somebody in there to figure out what that situation is. So I'm trying to be, show that I'm on board. I'm just not on board totally. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Given the positions that have been spelled out, and they are certainly divergent positions that I've heard so far, and I don't want to lose sight of who we're talking about. We're talking about helpless, vulnerable children Got to remember that. That's the core of all of this. We're also talking about, unfortunately, a local economy that is not bringing in revenue through the property tax, which is the only tax we're allowed to levy. The demands are here and the revenue stream just isn't keeping up with those demands. As Chairman Boyd appropriately pointed out, that's the frustrating part, among other things. In an ideal world, we'd be able to sit here and say, yep, we've got the funds right away and we can do this right away. And this meeting would have ended a half an hour ago. And that's what I think we're all struggling with. But cannot move away from who are we talking about? We're talking about helpless, vulnerable children. And shame on us if we ignore that fact. That being said, you maybe read my mind a little bit. Of these 4 proposals, which 2 at least would be your highest priority?
Foster care and kinship, because I currently have a hold on our agency program. Our agency program, we have greater control over the quality and the fiscal aspect of it. And second would be the position that is in our county budget and our state budget already, which is the program specialist. Those program specialists provide us with an opportunity to have additional organizational capacity.
Are you saying 38 and 41 or 38 and 39? I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't write the numbers down. 38 is 3A on the agenda.
So 38
Yes,
and 39, the way I'm looking,
those would be your 2 highest priorities?
those would be my 2 highest priorities. But then, to be honest with you, 38 and 39 in my brain have an asterisk to them. Because we're talking about the same program and the hierarchy, it's all within foster care and kinship. It's 2 additional staff. But 38 creates an organizational structure to manage the additional workforce. And then, so if I had an asterisk next to what would be my number 2, or maybe your number 3, it would be on your budget or on your agenda, D, because D is in the county budget and D is currently in my state budget. And that would give me organizational capacity to look at things like Controller Gettings has referenced, like programming and quality and the deliverables. Currently, we have very limited organizational capacity. I would say to you, I would say to the person watching at home, when you look at CYS, we have those 47 staff and we have 1 receptionist. We have 47 staff and currently we have in our building 1 case aide. When you look at that administrative support, so what came before you, in my opinion, administratively is there were dominoes being built, but it wasn't scaled. It wasn't scaled to be able to provide, as you added direct service staff, a scaling of support that balances it. And so from my vantage point on a day in, day out basis, we tip. But we are heavier when you look at every total position. We have far more direct service positions, and we should. But those people doing the direct service work have very few people around them that by the nature of their position are designed to offer that admin support and that day in, day out clerical support. So those folks that are direct service pull out of direct service to do admin and clerical work. And then the admin and clerical work do direct service work. And so to get back to my point of how do we know what we need? Again, the average person at CYS on a day in and day out basis may have an agenda of what our daily to-do list is going to be. But you might as well throw it in the garbage and burn it up, because I don't know today whether we're going to get 3 emergencies or 25 emergencies. I don't know if somebody's going to threaten to kill my staff. I don't know.
And you said that happened earlier this week.
Yes.
let me cut to the chase. The way we're structured, and the structure of a salary board isn't something we dreamed up. The state determines how this process works. The county code says there will be a 4-member salary board consisting of the 3 commissioners and the controller, other than when instances involve another elected official. That's what the state has set out. That's the structure we have to follow. And in order for anything to happen, whether it's you or anybody else sitting there, you got to get 3 votes for anything to happen. And it's from what I've heard everyone say here at the table, I don't think you're going to get 3 votes for everything you want. Which leads me to once again ask, because I think there might be one member of the board who might be willing to meet you somewhere in the middle and give you
Thanks for the pressure,
give
man.
you part of what you want. Well, and
Thanks for the pressure, buddy.
I'm basing that
I
on
get it, I get
what
it.
I've heard you
Hey, I
say.
signed up for the job, I'm okay.
Well, and I'll conclude with this, and I'm going to repeat myself, probably for the 3rd time. Please don't forget, we're talking about vulnerable, helpless children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I make one final statement? I agree with what Dan says, and believe me, I am not sitting here trying to do the wrong thing for anyone, especially children. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we, the stewards of this county, are doing what is appropriate and necessary. Now, I'm saying that if I vote no on these other proposals, I'm asking you to bring in more information so that we can figure out a way to do this. Show me a way to do it without going crazy. You might, and I'd say might, even get his vote, okay? The point is, we're not here to tell you you're doing a bad job, John, not at all. But pull on the state, bring some people in here, let's have a few meetings, and let's get them to tell us directly, hey, this needs to happen, this needs to be appropriate. Then I can say, okay, I feel better about that. Because in some cases, some of your predecessors have blown smoke up my you-know-what, and I'm not comfortable with that. And therefore, in doing so, I'm the watchdog of this county. And I have to make sure that we're not doing things that aren't appropriate. And I'm not saying you're even quite, please, that's not meant. And I apologize, I'm not saying Mrs. Spillover's comments are well taken. I agree, and so are Dan's, and so are Commissioner Boyd's. But we need, so on the ones that he's gently applying pressure on me, we're thinking those I can do, because kinship, I see that part. I don't see the other part yet. Show me, and not today. Get me somebody in here that shows me what is going on. Let's get you something today and tell your people
Thank
that
you.
we're on
Thank
this.
you.
And at the same time, not go crazy because 6 people or 2 people is better than 8 or 9 people. Okay, so we're democracy is an ugly process, but it does work. Not necessarily cordially all the time, but it does work, and we need to take this discourse and make it better. We need to make sure that we are taking care of the children. But we need to make sure that we're not doing something and throwing something at it because we think that throwing money at it and people at it is going to help. But in the same vein, I want your people to understand, I think they're doing a great job. And I don't want them to go crazy in the job. I don't want them to be threatened. I don't want them to be unsafe. That is crazy. I would never, ever, ever think of that. Okay? I have experience where people that I know have died because of freedom. So I get it. But at the same time, I've got to make sure that we're not being ridiculous about purse strings. And that's where we hook up a little bit. Okay? So please take it for what we're talking about. But get me that contract monitor. I need that contract monitor. Okay,
Promise.
figure out what you're gonna
Promise.
do. I need that contract monitor. I don't want smoke.
No
I want a
exceptions.
contract monitor. Okay, good?
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, any further discussion?
Well, for the slow guy up here at the table, based on everything you've heard, tell me again, which of these are your priorities?
I'm not confused, Dan, I'm good.
I'm confused. I
38,
Yes.
39.
39,
Yes.
And 41.
41.
because 38 and 39 are in essence kinship.
Okay.
Trying to make that one now, come on now, come on. Two
All
and
right.
two, 1 and 1 still equals 2.
I'm saying,
I got my shoes on, but I know that enough.
thank you, everybody.
All right, we're gonna take these separate. We're gonna take these separately. First on deck, resolution 2021-38. Do we have a motion?
I'll move for number 38.
Second,
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings?
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
yes.
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution 2021-039. Do we have motion?
Wait. Let me find it. Hang on, I lost again. Here it is.
Do we have motion?
So moved.
I will second.
The motion is second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Question on the motion. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings?
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution 2021-040. Do we
I
have a
move
motion?
to be tabled.
I'll second to table.
All right, we have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings?
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And resolution 2021.
I move, but we table.
Do we have a second?
For 41?
I'm just asking. I just-
Yeah,
I'll second that. Motion is second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Question on the motion. Vanessa, please call the roll to table.
Controller Gettings?
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
no.
Commissioner Vogler?
No.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Motion fails.
All right, so now we're back up to the question.
I'll move for consideration of proposed resolution 41.
Do we have a second?
Second,
We have a motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Question on the motion. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings?
No.
Commissioner Spielvogel?
yes.
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you.
That was number 2. I still think that's part of that one, that you bring somebody in and out. I mean, I'm not saying it's not gonna happen.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask for a brief recess, please?
absolutely. Board is in recess 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Oh, I know why.
Pit stop.
Yeah.
Notice the two old guys have.
Mhm.
I beg your pardon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You resemble that remark.
Thank you, John.
How are you?
Have a good weekend.
You too.
You too. Thank you, John.
Dave, can you see that little, on the microphone, it's below the camera? Can you tap the inside the blue circle?
Right here?
Yeah. Fire it back up, hang on, we're turning everything back on. We are reconvening from recess, salary board's back in session. We are reconvening from, sorry, I didn't turn the mic on. Recess, salary board is back in session. Controller Gettys would like to read a statement.
I'd like to read a statement. This is dated today to the Lawrence County Commissioners, the row officers, the county employees, the Lawrence County voters and taxpayers. 14 years ago, I was honored and privileged to be elected the Lawrence County Controller and be seated in January 2008. Thank you. I get the chairman's mic. Wow. Absolutely. The voters have been very good to me and my family. The outpouring of love and help was very humbling and helped Julie, Corey, and myself through the difficult times surrounding our son Albert's death in Iraq. I asked the voters to allow me to be their financial watchdog, and I am forever grateful for that trust in me. During my time as controller, we were able to develop better training and education in my office, as well as advanced technology and efficiency. I'm especially proud that we were able to fully fund the county pension fund at a substantial savings for the taxpayers. Our actions have served to strengthen the accounting systems, improve accountability, and protect the residents and taxpayers of this great county. I am announcing my retirement early to allow for a smooth transition and let the voters choose my successor in the November 2021 election. My Chief Deputy, David Prestipine, CPA, has been with me every step of the way, and I will be endorsing him for the upcoming election. His knowledge, work ethic, and ability make him fully suited to assume the responsibilities of this office. I am most grateful and sincerely thankful, and thank you for your trust in me, and may God bless you one and all. Thank you so much. And with that, I am handing to you as chairman my resignation effective August 2nd, which is Monday.
Well, this is something that we've been talking about for the past week or so. Dave, when we came on board back last January, we butted heads a little bit, I think.
It's all good.
And rightfully so. And I go back to, if the commissioners and the controller agree on everything, someone's not doing their job.
Absolutely correct.
And so to that end, thank you for your service to the county. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for always being willing to make those tough decisions and always being willing and able to hold the county and this board to a higher level of service.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. Anyone who knows me knows that I do not mince words. And consequently, I do what I think is right. And I do that now because in leaving, it allows the election to be held where the voters will decide who should be my successor. And that is what I like. The voters of Lawrence County should be the decision makers as to who is going to serve. And that was done now because of that. And consequently, I thought in thinking of myself, I was thinking more of Lawrence County than I was of myself. And I want you to know that. I think you all do understand that. I've spoken to you about it. So that the issue and the timing and everything is essential to make sure that the voters are the people that are in charge of the watchdog of this county. And that is the Lawrence County Controller. And I thank all of you for your help.
So the other thing I want to say before I turn it over to my two colleagues, to Mr. Prestipine, in the interim here before the election and hopefully after the election, I have full faith and confidence that you'll continue the legacy of Controller Gettys as sometimes being a little bit of a pain in the rear end, but
He's a better personality than me.
sometimes being a little bit of a pain in the rear end, but always striving to do the right thing for the county and for the taxpayers of this county. I'm confident in your abilities to run that office, both in the lead up to the election and hopefully after the election as well. But thank you specifically to Dave Gettys, again for your service and your friendship.
I appreciate it.
I'll turn it over to my colleagues, as I'm sure they both have comments.
I'm sure Dan has worked with you longer, so we'll save his comments for last, again, yes, you have that relationship, we butted heads, opinions were different, but
Makes the world go round.
it's what it is, and you have that, the mutual respect for each other and what your duties are and your job is and mine coming in, being new, there are things that we know, things that we don't know, things that we have to work on, things that we may change, may not change, but at the same time, you have that respect that is there and you argue and have differences of opinion, but at the same time, once that meeting is over, once it's done, you go back to
It's finished.
it's finished, it's done, and you again try to work through, come to compromise like we did earlier today. You come to compromise, you continue to have those relationships. I am thankful for the time that you were here during my tenure as a commissioner, and I know that you have served the citizens of Lawrence County very well.
Thank you.
I look forward to working with Mr. Prestipine. I just don't know that the flavor of the arguments will be the same. I don't know that I can look at you and say, yes, but
That's a
still.
wonderful compliment, and thank you, Loretta. And I'm glad that that's the case, and I'm sure the flavor will change, but it might not be chocolate and I'll be vanilla.
I have to say that,
It is true, I mean, we are a different
everyone's
personality.
got a different personality, and I just couldn't pass that up because I say, I don't know that there's some people that you can say yes, but and be assertive, aggressive, whatever it may be, and Dave Prestipine, it may be an assertiveness, but it's
More
just
calm.
more, because this is how it is, Loretta, and all right. I appreciate the fact that I did have the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Loretta, I appreciate it.
And you and your family
I wish the
enjoy.
county, you as the commissioners, and all the
Yes.
best, because obviously the county has done nothing but wish me the best.
Yes, and my sentiments to you that, yes, enjoy and enjoy the fruits of your labors with your family, yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, David, I'm sitting here and I had a flashback because our friendship actually predates our public service. My flashback is bumping into you on occasion. I think at one point you worked in the First Federal Plaza.
Yes.
And I can still, and I did my banking there, and I used to see you sometimes in the banking area or in the lobby by the elevators. Did you have a mustache at one time?
Yes, I did.
I remember that.
Little caterpillar kind of
Yes,
mustache.
yes. So at least my memory's still functioning.
It's been quite a few years ago.
I know, we're talking a long time ago. So our friendship.
You were in your 20s, let's put it that way.
Well, and then, I came up here thanks to the voters in 04. You came here in 08, but not long after I came here, unfortunately, a scandal broke out involving the county treasurer. And it took a lot out of a lot of people. And it took a long time to put an end to that scandal. Fortunately, the legal system did work, and the treasurer was removed from office and sent to jail. But then we had a job of rebuilding confidence in this county government. And you played a major role in that when you took office in 08. You helped that happen. And you've done a lot of good things. You touched on what we've done for the pension plan. You were instrumental. You were the lead person in implementing that. But I don't want to lose sight of, I think probably one of the most important things you helped do during your time here was restore confidence in this government because of your professionalism. And again, that's a long time ago, and a lot of things have happened since then, but I don't think we want to forget the role you helped play in that. So I always tell people, and I'll tell you, first of all, our friendship will continue.
Hope with all.
Yes, yes.
But I want to wish you both a healthy and a lengthy retirement. And I'll turn briefly my attention before I finish to my friend Mr. Prestipine. we have at least one thing in common. We're both Westminster graduates. You probably had a much higher grade point average than I did. You had a harder major than I did. And you're a little bit younger than me, so unfortunately our paths didn't cross while we were in school. But the nice thing about this, and we all have mixed feelings about the decision you've made, but we can assure the public that the transition is going to be seamless. Mr. Prestipine will pick right up from where you're leaving off, and he'll hit the ground running, and I don't think we'll see any difference in terms of how smooth things operate. So that's a good thing. So my best to both of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Two things I'd like to say. Number one, my parents taught me two things. That is respect and integrity. Those are the things. Now, as far as David Prestipine, I'd have to say he's probably at least as smart, if not smarter than I am. He's much more cordial and he's much less caustic. But his problem is he hasn't been in this job as many years as I have. Unfortunately, you do not make a lot of friends as the county controller because you're always keeping the rules from being broken. I will tell all the employees that I have never, ever done anything personal. It's always been professional. So when you come and tell me, Dave, it's me, you can't do that. It's like, yeah, I can and I will because it's the right thing to do. So thank you. Now, if you would possibly introduce these next motions,
Maybe I'll take care of it.
I would appreciate that. You got me a little bit choked up,
I thought we were gonna
which is
go through this
very,
without-
very rare.
I never thought I'd see it in my life.
Yes.
I didn't either.
But this is resolution 2021 dash 142. Which reads, and this is a continuity of government thing. I'm gonna preface it by
Yes.
saying that. Whereas section 1624 of the county code states salary board may meet from time to time. Whereas the elected controller will retire effective August 2nd, 2021, and whereas the county wishes to keep the controller as a consultant, and whereas this position will include full insurance benefit coverage with 100% of the cost being paid by the employee. Now therefore be resolved that a position titled financial consultant be created a salary of $2,500 per month through January of 2022, including insurance benefits paid 100% by the employee. The position will be eliminated on February 1, 2022. What this does is, even though as Dan mentioned, we are exceptionally confident in the seamless transition due largely to the efforts of soon-to-be acting controller Prestipine. This is one more measure that we can put into place to make sure that we don't skip so much as a step. And I'm thankful that Dave is willing, that Dave Gettings is willing to step up into this position. And I'll note that due to the fact that he is retiring, the monies for this position are just going to come out of the salary and controller line item. So it's a break even for the county. Any additional questions, comments? I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Gettings,
Abstain.
Commissioner Spielvogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is continuing in the same spirit. Whereas the elected controller will retire effective August 2nd, 2021, whereas the chief deputy controller will be acting as the controller until a replacement is named, elected, and whereas the chief deputy controller as acting controller will be a member of the retirement board at that time, and whereas the controller per Pennsylvania Act 96 serves as the secretary of the retirement board and receives compensation for these duties, which is reimbursed through the retirement fund per the act. And whereas a request is being made to compensate the chief deputy controller at the same compensation that the controller receives as secretary of the retirement board while serving as secretary of the retirement board. Now, as be resolved by Lawrence County Salary Board, the chief deputy controller received the prorated portion of the elected controller's retirement board secretary compensation while serving in that same capacity. I'll note that compensation only amounts to $5,000.
5,100, 5,000 roughly.
Right around there.
So for the end of the year, it'll be something like $2,000.
It's already in the budget, but as the resolution mentions, Deputy Controller Prestipine will be starting that acting role, here next week. And that the actual official controller position will be vacant until such time as an election is held. It's necessary, expedient, and appropriate, I think, to transfer that allowable salary, stipend, whatever you want to call it, to the deputy controller. This is just a formal mechanism through which we have to move to get that done. Any questions, comments? No. Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second, we have motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, question on the motion. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Controller Bennett,
Abstain.
Commissioner Spielvogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Is there any additional business before the board? Please.
I would only ask if, that the commissioners would treat David Prestipine better than they treated me. No, I'm kidding.
We'd ask Deputy Controller Prestipine that he treat us better.
I wanted you to get done with the accolades before I said that.
I do have one final thing as it relates to Dave, I don't wanna step on your toes, but, in the event people are curious, you are planning to, notify all appropriate officials, including the governor's office, because when there is a vacancy, such as the one you'll be creating, and as we've noted, by virtue of Mr. Prestipine being the chief deputy controller, by law, he becomes the acting controller, as Mr. Boyd pointed out. The governor does have the authority to nominate someone for this position, subject to state senate confirmation. However, as you also noted, your timing of this step that you're taking would allow for a special election to fill your unexpired term.
Which would be the normal election on November 2nd.
Yes. So, but I do want to note that does not preclude the governor from
No, that's
taking the step of nominating.
Well, the governor has to, I had to do my thing, and you guys have to do your thing, and the governor has to do his thing. I'm not trying to usurp the governor in any possible way. I'm just saying, this is what I'm doing.
But I commend you. You've covered all your bases. I know you work closely with your solicitor and you consult.
And your
with us.
solicitor.
Mhm.
Right.
And looks like everyone who needs to be notified will be notified. But again, there is that potential that the governor could nominate, and I want to make it clear, he doesn't appoint someone, he nominates
Yes, correct.
someone.
It
and
must be
goes
approved by the
by
Senate.
the state senate.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Yes.
Council, any additional comments, questions, or further business report?
No.
Hearing none,
I move we adjourn.
we have a second?
This will be my last adjournment of the salary board.
Isn't that nice to say, by the way?
Yes. Yes.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, question on the motion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Dave?
Congratulations.
And Mr.
Yes,
Prestipine,
absolutely.
I don't want to.
I know we
Okay.
talked.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
No kids, attention.
Appreciate it.
All right, you want,
Thanks, Morgan.
He's not giving to you.
You know how to do it, I don't.
I'll get
Hey,
that. Hang on a
since
second.
we're just here, can we?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.